I've just arrived at the Adrian Flax Arena in King's Lynn for our first practice day on the Sidecar Speedway for over 18 months. To say I'm excited is probably an understatement, but it's fabulous just to see and hear the activity and the tangible feeling of excitement that you get at a race meeting. It's absolutely fabulous. I'm just walking down to the track to have a look at it and actually to see if we can get in the pits, because there's a lot of people here today in a variety of classes, and I'll turn the camera around in a minute to show you what they look like. But we've got juniors right the way through to people like me, and I'm probably one of the oldest people in the sport at the moment, but it's a fabulous sport to be in when we can do it. This is where we are today. This is the Adrian Flax Arena track, and we'll be travelling around there at upwards of 60 miles an hour, sideways most of the time. As you can see, they're just setting up in the pits here. There's going to be a screen there with all the information on, touch screen that everyone can use. My driver's just turned up. He's back in unloading the bike, and I'm just about to rush back to him and tell him that we need to get down here pretty quick to get a place in the pits. And here we have the bike just turning up. It's being very, very well organised. Everyone has to wear face coverings when they're in the pits or in anywhere close to each other. We have to sign in. We have to sign in anyway to race, but this is also to sign in to say that we're here. This is how we generally take our stuff around to the pits. The bike becomes a wheelbarrow with all the kit, and then it gets all taken off and we sort through it and away we go. Racing starts, or practice for today. So now the bike is being turned from a wheelbarrow into a bike. The fairing goes on. That's to protect the wheel, but mainly other riders, because obviously contact with another bike can happen and does happen, and it just stops any calamities should that happen. So if you look around, walking around the bike, I'm on the back. I held on to that small handle and I lean forward and grab hold of the handle down by the battery, and I pull all my weight forward so that when we're going into the corner, I'm right on the front wheel so that my head is level with the handlebars. And then as we come back through the corner, I slide backwards to put more weight on the back wheel while staying down the side of the sidecar as close to the ground as possible so that our centre of gravity is as low as possible. It's quite technical. The sidecar wheel might look as though it's just turned over at an angle, but it's actually canted over at that angle to make the bike turn, but it's also turned inwards so that when the throttle is turned off, the bike will automatically turn right. These two guys spent the winter 2 years ago completely building this bike from scratch. Philip, who's the driver and the one kneeling, bought the engine, and it's an ex-Suzuki sponsored engine from 2018. They then have a jig to build the motorbike on, and they've built the whole bike around the engine using the jig to get the alignment right. Bit of bike maintenance going on here with making sure that the chain's running true. It's really important to get the chain running straight and true onto both sprockets, because if there's a slight angle to it, it can tip the chain off. What you will notice is that the bike has no suspension on the back end. The only place it's suspended is the front wheel. There's no suspension on the back end. That's because the tracks are sufficiently smooth not to warrant it, and that you actually lose drive if you have suspension on there. A couple of years ago we were riding a grass track sidecar, and we put a solid bar in where the suspension was just to make it hard, so that we didn't get the bounce that we get with suspension. Here's one of our competitors, Paul Whitelam. He has a different bike, same or similar engine, but it's a different style of bike. Very, very competitive rider, and one to look out for us. Another bike that's turned up here. This is a guy who's been doing Sidecar grass track for a great many years, and he's just bought himself a Sidecar Speedway bike. And this is Rob Wilson's bike. He's running a Honda compared to the Suzuki's that most of us run. As you can see, it looks like a pretty professional setup. This is a mixed practice today, so we've got quads up here. We've got the juniors, which is the young people riding on their solos. We've got 500cc solos, which is the adults, and there might be some GT 140s in there. And we've also got, over the far side there, we've got carts. So I think that's actually the GT 140s up the back there. So we've got carts on there, and this is all on shale surface racing or riding. And here around the corner we have a different class which are called flat trackers, and they're basically like Speedway, and they use different tyres and different bikes, but it's basically the same sort of concept, that they ride around 4 laps the same as the Speedway bike. Different style of riding because they don't turn the back end out as much as the Speedway bikes. They ride it round the corners more. The tyres on the flat trackers are very different to the ones that the other bikes use. They're a lot more like a road tyre, quite chunky, but there's a lot more rubber that goes onto the tread. This is the sort of tyre that we use on the sidecars on the front wheels. That is a Speedway front tyre for a solo Speedway bike, a junior one. This is a GT 140 front wheel. These are the tyres that they use on the quad bikes, and even them are different. So that's similar to the flat track, and that's more to the sort that is used on grass track. We've tried a few things, different gearing, different techniques, different track position. Still got a bit of a problem with the engine, but we're working on a process of elimination now, and there really is only one thing, and we think that we've got a tight or sticking valve, which basically is that one of the shims on the cams is tight, so it's not closing properly, which means that the engine, when it gets hot, is fluffing. So after 3 practices, we've decided to call it a day rather than cause any damage to the engine, so that we're ready for racing next weekend.